Welcome to Broke Horse Moms, the podcast for all of us who thought our kids riding horses was just a phase. Turns out it wasn't, and honestly, I am so glad we were wrong. I'm your host, Angie Trueblood, the OG Broke Horse Mom, and I'm here to laugh, learn, and figure out this wild, wonderful sport right alongside you. Let's giddy up, friends. Hi, friend. So today's episode is a little different from what you will normally hear on the podcast. Instead of interviewing another horse mom or horse expert, I am actually sharing my broke horse mom story, how my family and I stumbled into this sport, how it unfolded, and why I felt like we needed this community in the first place. Honestly, our story started off very quietly. No lightning bolt moment where we knew we were signing up for a life of barn life. It was more of a slow burn, kind of like a, what just happened kind of story. So, full disclosure, horses do run in our family, kind of. They don't run on my side of the family, but they do run on the True Blood side of the family. My husband's brother, or Uncle Ryan, as we call him, was deep into horses throughout his childhood and early adult life, specifically in polo cross, which is a really interesting sport that combines elements of polo and lacrosse all on horseback. I know, it's insane. But he grew to be pretty great in the sport, ultimately representing the U.S. youth team in 2001 and the U.S. World Cup in 2007. And like many families with kiddos who ride, he was wonderfully supported by my mother-in-law and father-in-law who pinched their pennies, rearranged their family schedule, and worked many a days at the barn to help pay for this sport that was way above their pay grade. So when Chloe started showing little sparks of interest in riding, it wasn't totally foreign to our family. There were people in her corner and mine who understood horses, who knew that their benefits far outweighed the price, and who could help lead us in the right directions, which has proven to be really invaluable for our family. Every step of the way, we've had my mother-in-law and brother-in-law to sort of swap stories with, share suggestions, and get feedback on what we are experiencing as a family. So her story starts off where many horse stories start, an innocent pony ride at a county fair. By the time she was 10, she started asking to try horseback riding because friends of hers had started taking lessons. So we took her to the barn of a friend first. My friend's daughter rode and had a horse of her own, so they were gracious enough, I think that's what we'll call it, to let Chloe ride on their horse in the ring and even go on a little trail ride, which immediately, of course, led to Chloe asking for riding lessons for Christmas. Santa obliged, and during the spring of 2021, at age 11, she started taking lessons at a local lesson barn, I think starting every other week, fairly sporadically. Eventually, those sort of turned into weekly lessons, which was fine because she was still playing soccer and riding was not the center of everything yet. It seemed like a regular extracurricular activity. And people would say things to me like, oh, Lord, horses are so expensive. But at that point, paying for a $50-ish a lesson per week was okay for the time being. I even jumped in on the fun and took a couple of lessons because I loved being out at the barn surrounded by these glorious animals. And I think it was me fulfilling a childhood dream. When I was young, I desperately wanted to ride, but my parents realized I was allergic to horses. And honestly, my parents did not have the money to explore that type of hobby, but it still stuck with me. And I was really excited to be close to this sport as Chloe sort of stepped into it. Now, everything changed in September 2022 when we moved to a new barn because her original trainer got a traditional job. As you likely know, this career of being a lesson trainer is not for the faint of heart. And a lot of folks sort of dip their toes into traditional work at some point. Now, her new trainer was a phenomenal jumper coach, which at the time meant absolutely nothing to me because Chloe had not shown at this point. She was just jumping over tiny little cross rails, really learning to canter. But when we switched barns is when her passion really started to rear its beautiful head. And I started to think, uh-oh, what have we gotten ourselves into? One weekly lesson quickly became two. And then when the opportunity presented itself, we ended up adding a third day of riding in exchange for barn chores, which lo and behold, my kid ended up loving. Still, neither Jason nor I really knew where any of this was going. I mean, honestly, we didn't even know the directions we could go in. I still laugh when I think of Jason asking me one day, wait, there's like no season for riding, it's just all year. I'm like, oh goodness, what have we done? So, as her love of the sport grew, so did mine. I forced our family to go on a trail ride in the mountains of Asheville on vacation one time, and I took a few more lessons at a different barn. For sure, I am not a rider, but I do love riding very slowly, walking on a trail with a bomb proof horse. I keep thinking I may explore taking lessons again because that to me is such a dream going out on a Saturday on a nice trail ride. Um, it's just something I haven't made a priority. So hold me to it, my fellow broke horse mom. So at this new barn, Chloe took the first of many falls. She had never fallen off of a horse. And I will never forget this first fall because it was on the sweetest horse who honestly had just started cantering faster than she had ever cantered. And I saw it coming. I remember standing outside of the barn watching the horse go faster and faster. And me, in my fearlessness, went inside of the barn and hid so I did not have to watch my daughter fall. I know. She does not get that fearlessness from me for sure. So at that time, she also started riding bigger horses who were not your traditional lesson horses, right? They had a little bit more spirit to them, which also helped teach her and help her become a better rider. She jumped cross rails and started jumping some small 18-inch verticals. Soon enough, she fell very hard in love with a thoroughbred baby who had a bit of a bucking habit. And she learned to anticipate the bucks, redirect him when they were coming, and most of the time ride them like a prized rodeo girl. So obviously, the logical step was for us to lease this horse. To my naive horse mom eye, they did seem to be a match made in heaven until they didn't. So she took a pretty nasty spill in December of 2023. It was really the first time she'd gotten hurt on a horse. She had a broken collarbone. She had to get several stitches on her cheek, and there were lots of tears, primarily from me. But to say it was tough is an understatement as I look back at that experience. Honestly, any of the tears coming from her were more because she had to take time off riding. And I think she knew in her heart that she wouldn't be riding that horse again for a long while, and maybe realizing that he might not be her forever horse at that moment. For me, I questioned every single decision I had made up until that point to let her ride this horse, to let her lease him, and to let her and me fall so very much in love with him. I knew that I needed to be as strong as she was. I could not let this fall keep me from letting her do what it would take most kids a very long time to do, which is actually want to get back up on a horse. I mean, the day after we returned from the hospital from that first nasty fall, we went to the barn. She went to her friend's lessons, and when she had healed enough, she started doing one-handed chores at the barn. And as soon as the doctor said her collarbone was healed enough, which I still question, her trainer had the most perfect horse ready for her to get back on. At that time, this incredible horse, a literal saint, carried her through the rest of that show season. She let Chloe get her strength back. This horse let her grow as a rider without needing to worry about helping the horse grow. This horse was an older horse, very experienced, and not one of those dead lesson horses at all, but a horse that was such a teacher for her. During that time, it also let me as a mom recognize what it felt like to not feel worried that she was going to get hurt again. Even though I know it can happen at any time, I was able to feel this sense of peace during that season that I hadn't felt for a while when she was on that other horse. So, God bless you, Venus. You are the angel horse that everyone says you are. So at the end of 2024, Chloe's trainer shifted her lesson program to a lease or own model. Basically, to keep riding there, every kid needed to lease or own a horse. And at the time, I was kind of surprised by this shift, but looking back almost a year later now, I realize it's pretty common as kids grow in the sport, as they want to do more in the sport. No one is going to hand you over this horse that you can ride and train and show at the upper levels. So there were a few horses available to lease at that barn, but none of them felt like the right fit for her, especially not enough to justify the financial leap that we would be needing to take. So while we were figuring out what to do, Chloe started taking a few lessons at a friend's barn just to see if they might have a horse that clicked with her and to see what this new barn felt like. That is where she met Phoebe, a special little quarter horse Welsh cross, a big bodied pony who has opinions, which was really fun. We eventually learned that Phoebe only clicked with a handful of riders, and the trainer had even tried her with several other kids before without much success. In fact, I remember when I would text her trainer, Christine, to schedule a lesson, she would ask, "Is Chloe okay to ride Phoebe?" And I would laugh and say, yeah, she loves that pony. I'll never forget, though, one day standing outside the barn with Christine. We were talking about Phoebe because she owned the pony, the horse. She looked at me and she said, "I think there's something really special about that pony. I just haven't figured out what it is yet." And I joked at that time. I was like, oh, I still feel the same way about myself. But her comment about Phoebe really stuck with me. So Christine is primarily a hunter coach, and most of the ponies she trained were on the hunter track, if you will. So Phoebe had only ever been exposed to small hunter jumps. And when we first met her, she was 8 years old with only 2 years under saddle. So in horse terms, she was still pretty green. But over the next few lessons, it became clear what Phoebe's special gift was: jumping. Because Chloe has such a love for the jumper discipline, most of their lessons involved fences and jumping over them. And that is where this pony lit up. She would lock on to a jump, canter in with total determination. She never refused to jump, and honestly looked like the happiest pony on earth sailing around the ring with Chloe. It was like she had finally found her person, the one wild enough to do all that she wanted to do. So, as tough as the decision was, Chloe ended up transitioning to that new barn with the intent of riding Phoebe. And for a family that swore we were not ready to lease, well, we ended up leasing her, I think, within a month of being there because the pair just seemed so perfect together. Since then, through a ton of hard work from Chloe, Phoebe, and Christine, they have built something so special together. They've held their own on the local show circuit and even dipped their toes into rated shows. It has not all been smooth sailing. She has fallen off of her a few times, none too bad, but she has had to figure out how to manage Phoebe's speed and channel this horse's love of jumping into some sort of focus in the ring. But the growth between the two of them has been so incredible and so fun to watch. Now, their big goal for 2026 is Pony Jumper Finals in Lexington, Kentucky. And I will be sharing every step of that journey, including the wins, the wipeouts, and all the behind the scenes moments as we take it on together. Because honestly, 6 months ago, I didn't know what pony finals even meant. So I'm hoping that my perspective will offer you a little bit of insight into next steps or even just larger show opportunities for your kiddo. Through everything we have experienced these last 4 years, I have watched my daughter transform into an incredible horsewoman, the kind of kid who will hop on any horse that is offered to her, jump in to help with training, anticipate what horses and people need at the barn, and take on barn work with this level of responsibility and pride that I had never seen in her before horses came into her life. And while this has been her journey, it has definitely stretched me too in ways that I never expected. It's definitely been about learning to watch this new side of my daughter unfold and figuring out how to support her dreams without having a heart attack every time she heads into the ring. But I haven't done it alone. At every step, there has been another barn mom beside me, someone to pick us up from the hospital, cheer for Chloe when their own kids weren't even competing, send the sweetest get well packages after falls and disappointments, or just helping each other puzzle through these enormous gaps in what we don't know about this sport. Those friendships have been as much a part of this journey as the horses themselves. So that's my broke horse mom story, at least the beginning of it. Like many of you, I did not set out expecting weekends at shows, evenings in the barn aisle, or vacations planned around ponies. And yet here we are, and I would not trade it for anything. And that's why I started Broke Horse Moms, because none of us should feel like we're navigating this world alone, even though it often feels that way. I could not find a space outside of our own barns where moms could turn to each other for support, whether it's decoding barn lingo, second guessing show attire, or figuring out what the next best step is for our kids. Here at Broke Horse Moms, we are all learning, laughing, and sometimes crying along the way. But we are doing it together, and that's what makes it so special. I am so thankful that you are a part of this community, and I cannot wait to see where we take this together. Friend, thanks for listening to Broke Horse Moms, the podcast for all of us who swore this was just a phase. Want more? Head to brokehorsemoms.com and sign up for our virtual Barn Family newsletter. That's where I share behind the scenes extras, show season survival tips, gear recommendations, and horse mom life hacks. Basically, it's everything I wish someone had told me when Chloe first said she wanted to try horseback riding. I'll see you there.